Why not the Enduro?
Oh, it's not the first time I've heard that question. First time I've had to answer it on a podcast, though. That's like the most common question on my YouTube is why.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Why are you
right?
not racing
They've
on the Enduro?
You race Enduro. They have a bike called the Enduro, and you're picking the Stumpy.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of background, but basically last year, 2023, we were racing in Tasmania, and I was struggling with the sizes because the year before that I'd race on the S3 Enduro, which is like a medium, so quite small for me.
Yeah.
But I'd done well, had some good results on it. We won Trophy of Nations on that bike, stuff like that. And then going into in the off season, we're like, okay, we'll test the two sizes properly, get a few different stem lengths so we can get the reach comparable, and just lap them out and see. And we ended up just being more comfortable on the S4. Tom and I did a few days on our secret test track. It's not secret, but it's at Cheeseman or Craigieburn Forest in New Zealand, near Christchurch, and it's really rough and quite tight. Well, it's actually got everything. It's got some high speed stuff, it's got some tight stuff, and a lot of roots and holes that you're trying to stay on top of, which is quite similar to what we race, which is why we picked it to test on. Yeah. And we were going almost the same speed on the S3 and the S4, but the S4 I just felt like everything was happening a little bit slower.
Okay.
It's a little bit more in control.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we're going to race the S4 Enduro. Done. Sorted. We went to Tasmania, did Medina and Derby, and had good races there, was happy, and was on the S4 and loved it. And then came home, and I just got a new XC bike, the Epic Evo, like the long travel XC bike. And Tom and I thought we'd do like a piss take video where we ride the XC bike in a downhill or enduro setting. So I had a full face on and just went and rode all the downhill tracks in Christchurch on the XC bike. Yeah. And Tom filmed it and we made a funny video. And then after I was like, wow, this bike carries so much speed. And some of the corners on the stuff I ride on my enduro bike, I was like, I feel like I'm going faster. How does this work? Yeah. And then Tom's like, well, why don't you try the Stumpy? It's in between. It's in between the enduro and the XC bike. Yeah. So I was like, well, fair enough. So we went back up to our test track, back to Craigieburn, back at the same setup, but this time we had the S4 Enduro and an S4 Stumpy. Yeah. And we just, what was it? The first lap ever on the Stumpy. So I'd never ridden that bike in that size in my life. First lap down the track, or we did like a scouting lap, and first time lap was the same speed as my quickest lap on the Enduro.
Over what? How long's the track, time-wise?
The section we do is 3 minutes.
No way.
And I think, so it was the same. It was basically bang on 3 minutes with both bikes. Yeah. And then after that, and then we'd do a few more on the Enduro, a few more on the Stumpy, and the Stumpy just slowly got quicker. Yeah. And by the end of the day, the Stumpy was, 3 or 4 seconds quicker than the Enduro. That's huge. Which is a second a minute. Yeah. And if we're racing here for half an hour, that's 30 seconds. That's sometimes between first and 10th. Yeah. Yeah.
And you think it's just efficiency then? It's just carrying speed a bit better because there's that bit less travel, or?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on what you're riding. Okay. Because sometimes the top split, which is like a more high-speed open bit, wouldn't be as quick. Yeah. But the bottom split, which is where you can lose a lot of time, it's tight, it's all in the forest and rooty. Yeah. I was always quicker on the Stumpy. Okay. So I think it just depends a lot on the terrain. And the Enduro is such a good bike for like charging. But the thing is, when we race these EDRs on the World Cup, there's not actually that many sections that are like high speed bombing with really chunky stuff. Yeah. But there's a lot of niggly corners that are awkwardly tight, or flatter sections, or stuff you got to generate speed.
Yeah. We could lose a lot of time quite easily, I guess.
Yeah. So I think it's just that the stages we're riding are more suited to that bike. Yeah. But I think the Enduro, like I still have one at home, and if I'm going up the bike park and just like thrashing laps on all the bike park tracks, it's the perfect bike. Okay. So yeah, basically that's the history behind it. And then since then we've just been strictly Stumpy.
Yeah. And how was it making that mid-season change then? Was that because they were launching at that time, or just because it came available?
Yeah, so we're really lucky with Specialized. The crew there designing the bikes look after us very well. And they actually sent one out to New Zealand before the season. Yeah. The same one that we were going to get onto mid-season, so that I could at least get a baseline set up. Nice. For it. So we did that, got a baseline set up, and then when we did have to swap, because of the release date,
Yeah.
then the bike was familiar at least.
That's cool.
So yeah, we're quite lucky, but also really hard because you get so used to the Stumpy Evo, and then they send out a Stumpy that you've got to get set up and get it feeling good. But you don't want it to feel so good that it makes your other bike feel bad.
Because you can't ride it for the first.
Because you can't ride it for a few months. So it was like we brushed the surface. We didn't dig too deep because we're like, let's get it decent and then we'll park it.
Yeah.
And that worked really well. Like I've been so comfortable on both bikes, but especially the start of the season, the Stumpy Evo, I didn't feel like I was missing anything because we hadn't delved too deeply into that new bike.
Smart move.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of thinking that goes on.
Yeah.